Good afternoon. It is time for Coffee on the Coast. Good afternoon and welcome to Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. It's hard to believe a month has gone by, but we are so lucky because it is time for Book Banter with Therese Horstketter of the Manitowoc Public Library. Welcome back, Therese.
Hi, good to be back again.
It is so good to see you. Yeah, happy fall. And like right on cue, the weather has really turned into fall weather.
It did. Yeah, it did. And it's wonderful.
So we've got some fun books that you're going to talk to us about today, but I do have to say, last time you were on, you talked about an author named Mary Roach, and we talked about her book Fuzz and how she had a lot of other books with like a single title name. I did listen to Stiff, one of her books, since we last talked, and it was really interesting. She did have a fun style, and you're right, it's very like science-based, but in such an enjoyable way. I highly recommend it.
Yep, you learn a lot from her, and sometimes maybe more than you want to know about some things. But yes, definitely fun. She makes it not dry, not just here's the facts. You get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, I think my husband was a little bit like, why are you telling me all of this information about embalming, Tina? But she made it so interesting. So
Definitely she does.
So today we're also going to be talking about some books. So Therese, let's dig right in. Let's talk about this book that's on the left, Buses Are A-Coming, Memoir of a Freedom Rider by Charles Person.
I have this book at home right now. I just started it, and it has a really nice feel for what kind of a hard subject it is. The author at 18 was an original member of the Freedom Riders. I was not aware of this group. They left Washington, D.C. by bus in 1961 and traveled a mix of Black, white, male, female activists, including future Congressman John Lewis. And they set out to discover whether America would really abide by the Supreme Court rulings saying that segregation was unconstitutional. So they drove through several states. They ended up in Alabama, and they found that the answer was no. And they had two buses that left, and when they got there, one was completely incinerated, and the people barely got off before that happened, and the other one, a good number of the people, including this author, were just beaten nearly to death by a mob just for this work that they were doing. And like I said, I've just gotten partway into it. It's very easy, interesting read, but yeah, a tough thing. I'm sure I have much more difficult reading to go through as I go, but it was just interesting to me as something I was basically not aware of. I'm sure other people tested the waters in different ways too, but this was a movement that was made that these people went through like 6 states of travel to, go through this, and then to end up at that point.
No, it's heartbreaking.
Yes.
And it's an important read, I imagine, because we must not forget that part of history. And it's an important reminder that that is no way to treat humanity. That sort of inhumane treatment of our fellow man is just unconscionable. I imagine it's a heavy read, but I'm glad to hear you say that it's, accessible.
Right. I really am enjoying just the beginning of it. And since I had a couple nonfiction mixed in with the other things that I'm reading along the way, where you can set it down and come back to it a little bit easier. And yeah, I think it's going to be a very good read, and I'm glad I picked it up. It's like I said, something I really was not aware of that some people had gone through in history, that I don't know how much it changed history, but they were part of what changed history.
Yeah, right. Brave souls to do that. Has Charles Person written some other books that you're aware of?
I did not see any others by him.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Wow. Thanks for telling us about that one, Therese. So
Mhm.
there's another one on this same image. It's called Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruff. And I just have to read, it's pretty small, viewers, but look at what it says on the front cover. Utterly charming, distilled to elemental purity. And then this is the part that really gets me. It says, such a tender, carefully polished work that it seems like a blessing we had no right to expect. That is really high praise for a book.
It is. And it is a beautiful book. I have to say, the way I kind of feel about it, there are certain books that you feel like they almost wrap around you. They just surround you so much into feeling that you're a part of it. And this had, it was just very unique when I read the blurb about it. And it is two neighbors, Addie and Lewis. They've been neighbors for many years, not overly friendly, but aware of each other. Each has lost their spouse several years ago and have empty houses. Kids are grown and moved away. And Addie approaches Lewis with the idea that they should spend their nights together. And it is because she is tired of being alone and this quiet house, and she wants someone to talk to and fall asleep next to. And so you go from here wondering what will happen and how will people talk and how will their families feel about this unique relationship. So the book is only 163 pages long. It is a wonderful read. Um, there's some, I guess, humorous aspects, but that's not the majority. It really is a dramatic read, and I can't recommend it enough.
Wow.
It's just wonderful. It is about a 6-year-old book, but something that I like to, mention to people.
I'm glad you did because I've never heard of it. And so we're talking about Our Souls at Night. It's getting very high praise, not only from the blurb on the cover, but from Therese. This is by Kent Haruff. I think you said he's got some other books as well.
He does. He has some other wonderful books. They all are, I guess you would describe them as kind of family drama, and most of his are bigger than this one is, longer, I should say. But yeah, they are all good. I read for sure one other, I think maybe two, if I'm trying to remember titles, but very good. They are highly recommended by numerous staff that have read his things.
Very
That they
nice.
are, yeah, yeah. It's just, yeah, it's a charming book, a little heartbreaking, a little of everything.
Wow. All right. That's Our Souls at
In a
Night.
small short read.
Great recommendation. Thanks, Therese. Well, we've got a couple more, so stand by. Let's talk about The Husbands by Chandler Baker. And I'm looking at the artwork on the cover. Is that flames?
That is. One part of the book does involve a fire that happened and a man was killed in this fire. And it actually begins with a couple, um, Nora and her husband Hayden are both successful. She is a successful attorney. He also, and they both have um, just, busy lives, but they have one child and Nora is expecting. And they decide to start looking at different houses, and they find a neighborhood that they like. She seems to really fall in love with one house, and he's kind of on the fence, but, leaning towards it. But um, the people that they meet in the neighborhood all seem to be very successful couples. And they find out that there is one house there that is still being investigated because of the fire and the husband who died in the fire. But the wife still is in contact with the people there, and one of the women is a therapist, so, and she does couples counseling. And along the way, while they're still deciding, Nora ends up being part of the investigative team for this fire. They do start counseling. There are a lot of things that happen with these people, and they're not moved in yet. So they get really, just kind of pulled in here. And the one thing that seems unusual is Nora is constantly, as it's narrated, annoyed with her husband that he doesn't help more. She does everything. She does all the little things at home and, cooking, cleaning, errands, everything. And her husband can say he's helping more or that he will, but it never really happens. And when they visited the husbands, or when they started to meet some of the husbands from this neighborhood, they seem to help a lot more. And so, yeah, it was a little different read. And there are a lot of things going on in it. And without saying much more about, what might be happening, yeah, it was a pretty good book. And it's not number one on my list, but it was a pretty good book. And yeah, it's worth checking out.
Are the husbands hypnotized to make them help?
That would be nice to think that. And of course, there's a mystery because of the fire. So there's a little of that in there. And yep. So yeah, you have to kind of read it and find out, because I don't want to say too much,
Interesting. Have you read other selections by Chandler Baker? I don't think we've talked about this author before.
No, actually, it says that she wrote, they called her the queen of the feminist thriller. And I was kind of surprised because I wasn't familiar with her. It said she wrote one other adult novel, Whisper Network, which I'm not familiar with, but otherwise she had written young adult novels. So she's newer to adult fiction.
So does this particular one, The Husbands, does it read more like a young adult novel or more like a feminist novel?
Well, I guess, I don't know if you'd even say feminist. So I don't know what her other book was like, but this one, it's more, I guess, siding with women to some extent. But yeah, so I guess you'd have to say that. Definitely not young adult.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about this next one. This is called The Secret History of Food by Matt Siegel. It's strange but true stories about the origins of everything we eat.
It is. This is another one I have at home. And so I like to pick these kind just like the buses are coming. But this one is kind of like Mary Roach could have written it. The one who wrote Stiff and Fuzz. The author has written articles before. It says for like food publications, that kind of thing. And this is, I believe, the first book he's written from what I found. And it is that strange but true stories. And there are some that are, I was reading it out loud to my husband because, well, he talks about all the many different foods that were eaten, including, there were a lot of pies for some reason. And you think pie is a good thing until it's talked about eel pie, pigeon pie, swan pie, and traditionally served cold, which makes them even better. But he talks about hare pie, that it is, he talks about, and it's an old English recipe. Get a hare, cut it in pieces, break the bones, and season it to taste. Lay it in the pie with sliced lemon and butter and close the same. So, and it says British were especially known to make very heavy crust, bottom and top, that were not meant to be eaten. They were a base to, because they did not use forks. They had not, it's like they just hadn't not started using forks. They used knives, but not forks. And so they would pick it up and eat it. And it said that if the crust didn't hold it as much, that's why you left the bones and things, because it made it a little easier to pick it up. And so just this couple pages here had quite a bit that, yeah, kept interrupting my husband with what he was doing to keep sharing other things they were eating weird. And it says still to this day, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, that's what it's in the book, that British pies still tend to be heavy on the crust. Just, I'm sure not as much as it was before, but yes. So,
so that's interesting because
that's a little blurb from it. Yes.
The pictures on the cover, Therese, are like a bagel, a hamburger, some Fruit Loops, and there's no indication about like swan pie or pigeon pie.
So we're just starting out at this point. He goes back far and starts out. So I'm sure some of this is going to get easier. There was a blurb though, like on Amazon about the book saying, are you really eating olive oil or lamplight oil, things like that. So he gets into a lot more as we go, but I just had to share that part because it was fun.
I have this delicious image, Therese, of like you giving your husband facts about unique foods while I'm like giving my husband facts about embalming and like cadavers. Oh, the things we learn from books.
Oh, yes.
Very cool. Well then, okay, the last book we're going to talk about today is by an author that we've talked about a number of times in this show, and it's Liane Moriarty. Liane Moriarty. We're not sure if we're saying it right, but that's our best guess. If you know the proper way to say it, I'd love to know. But we're going to talk about Liane Moriarty's book, Apples Never Fall.
Okay, so this is about a family, mom and dad, Stan and Joy, and 4 grown children in basically their 30s, 40s. Stan and Joy met and loved playing tennis. They became partners and as well as single players, and they won tournaments and things, but never got higher than more like local level, basically. A bit bigger, but never to professional. And they had 4 children. All the kids played tennis. The parents actually opened up a tennis business. They would train kids to play tennis. And so they always had kids hanging around their house because they had tennis courts nearby, of course. So they did all of that. And the kids it was the same kind of story, that they went so far with it. Some just dropped out when they didn't want to do it anymore. Some still play, but never professional status. And what happens is Stan and Joy have now retired. And the mom, Joy, disappears one day. She had been, kind of bored, kind of, it's the same old thing. Should we have ever retired? That kind of a feeling. And a woman showed up at their door one night. It was dark, and she showed up with an injury and saying she needed help, like she ran away from a boyfriend. Well, not only do they help her, but they kind of bring her into the household. And I think it's half out of boredom on Joy's part. And so it's now goes to what the adult children are thinking about this situation, and how long is this woman staying, and things like that. So it's a big book. It goes way into much more, and there are it goes into depth as to how each of the kids feels about what their growing up years were like, and also with their concerns about their family. And part of it is their dad is injured when the police come to talk to him. So was this a fight and something happened to the mother, or was it an accident and he just doesn't know where she is? And as the time goes along, they keep you updated as to, the timeline, and then it goes back and forth. it doesn't jump time terribly, but the children will remember things as they're going through these situations about their childhood and leading up to current. I've got a quarter of the book left, and it is really good.
Wow. So when you say it's a big book, how many pages are
Yes.
in the copy you're reading
I would say it's
approximately?
about 460, somewhere in
Oh.
there. So it's a good read, but it's a good read.
Yeah, that makes all the difference. Then it could be as
Yes.
many pages as needed. So we're
Right.
talking about Apples Never Fall. That's by Liane Moriarty, or Liane. I'm never going to get that name right. Liane Moriarty. And so she is really, from the books that we've talked about, really good at crafting a story.
Oh, yes. My favorite was The Husband's Secret. And I know we talked about that one, where a woman finds a note that the husband left for, if you find this, I'm dead. But she reads it while he's alive.
Yeah.
So that was a good one, just to revisit that one. That's one of my favorites to suggest to people.
And I
But
did
yes,
read that
this
on your
one is-
recommendation, and it was very
Yes.
good.
Yes. But this one, yep, this is really a worthwhile read.
Yeah, awesome. Now
Yeah.
you've got a quarter left, so you haven't finished this book yet, right?
Right.
There was one book that we read by Liane Moriarty that was really good until about a quarter left, and then it took
Yes.
a really kind of bizarre turn.
Yeah, we will hope that doesn't happen here.
Yes. All right, here's hoping.
Yeah.
Fun. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the read. I am looking forward to checking out these recommendations. Viewers, I hope you
Okay.
are too. Check out books from your local Manitowoc Public Library. We also have an independent bookseller here in the city of Manitowoc, so lots of ways to get your read on.
Mhm.
All right, enjoy the rest of your book, Therese. We will see you next time
Thanks.
on Coffee on the Coast.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.